Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the living room studio. I am your man in Japan, jcontra, and I'm here to celebrate 5,000 subscribers. Can you freaking believe that, folks? I never thought I would get to 5,000, but here I am, and I thought I'd mark the occasion by reading some of your collecting specific questions. And without further ado, here we go. How come there aren't any junk Sega Genesis / Mega Drives or junk PC engines? This is a very interesting question because I have recently seen a few junk PC engines / Sega stuff in the junk section, but it's just uncommon because Sega stuff, aside from the Saturn, didn't really do well here. The Mega Drive sold so much better in the United States and Europe than it did in Japan. And so because it's much rarer, you're just not going to find that in the junk section. Likewise, when you do find stuff in the junk section, it is going to be a bit more expensive. And the Mega Drive stuff that I have seen in the junk section has been really beat up. And same goes for the PC engine. You don't see a lot. Are these Neo Geo games brand new, unopened? Now, this was a question on a video in Mandarake, and what I have found out recently is that what Mandarake will do, not only for the Neo Geo games, but for the games in the showcase in general, is because they are so close to the harsh UV lighting, they actually wrap the games in protective plastic. And so while other shops won't do this, they will just put bare carts and bare boxes right in front of these bright fluorescent lights, and they will fade over time. Even after a year or two, the ink on the boxes and the cartridges will start fading. Not so at Mandarake, where while the games may look new because they're in a nice plastic wrapping, they're used games, but they just have that protective layer around them. Next, when you have a rare and valuable Famicom game that won't boot, do you blow on the contacts to get it working? Absolutely not. Do not blow on your cartridges. What I do is when I have a game that doesn't work, I just get a Q-tip, some rubbing alcohol, it's just an alcohol solution that you get at like the drugstore, and just clean the contacts. That will 99.9% of the time fix your problems. When you're blowing on the contacts of games, you're putting in this sort of microscopic amount of moisture and your mouth bacteria. You're getting that on your cartridge, and you may end up, maybe not immediately, maybe not even within the next 5 years, but if you don't do anything with that game, you're eventually going to be leading to rust and weird mildew buildup on your contacts. You don't want that. That's so, ugh. Okay, moving on. So someone asked about, specifically on a video for a hard-off in Yamaguchi. I've been to quite a few hard-offs in my travels, but I've never seen these stickers on games, like SS2 on Cyberbots. What do they mean exactly? Obviously SS is Sega Saturn, but 2 is into the release number. Interesting way to catalog games. I went back to that video and I realized that a lot of hard-offs, what they'll do is for sort of expensive games that they might have on shelves, they'll have stickers on the games that just indicate that the disc or the cartridge is not in the box or the case. So you'll take that game up to the register, you'll pay for it, and they'll pull the actual game itself and put it into the box. So SS2 just means that it's for the Sega Saturn, and it's, the 2 being the corresponding disc that went in that particular case. Next up, what is your recommended method for transporting large amounts of your collection from Japan back to America? I'd really like to know because I might be moving to Japan for work at some point in the near future, and I plan to collect games while I'm there. So because I've been living in Japan for 7 years, and I've also been going back for weddings and pretty much every Christmas now, I basically just fill up 2 giant suitcases. Most airlines, when you're flying from Japan to the United States and vice versa, they usually allow you to carry, I think it's on the Star Alliance or whatever United and ANA is a part of, whatever that system is. Generally, even for, the bare bones economy class that I fly, they will let you take 2 big, I don't know what the dimensions are, but 2 big suitcases as your checked luggage. I think you can carry up to like, I think it's 23 kilograms slash 50 pounds worth of stuff. And every time I always max out the weight and the dimensions. Just taking back video games. I even sometimes will put a lot of stuff. If it's Christmas, I usually carry my presents that I'm taking back in my carry-on, and then all of my checked baggage is just full of video games and a few miscellaneous items. That's what I've been doing, and actually, well, depending on how things turn out in the next 6 months, I've also been looking at shipping items back to America. There's a bunch of different ways you can do that. If you do it by air, obviously it's going to be the most expensive and take it about 2 weeks. There's also surface transport that you can also do, and that's actually very cheap, but obviously it's going to be much more expensive. But because shipping in Japan, it's both a science and an art in Japan, because Japan has a very reliable, very excellent shipping system, both for its normal post office service and for like Kuroneko Yamato and Sagawa. They've also got an amazing number of great carriers. So don't worry. Yeah, it might end up being expensive, but then you got to think about, if you're going to be in Japan for a limited time, and this extends to not just living in Japan, but if you're only coming for a couple weeks, don't be like me and just buy up massive amounts of stuff, because even having lived here for a while and being able to take stuff back, I do see a lot of stuff that I've taken back and have been like, maybe this wasn't exactly worth the volume of shipping it back. So I think it's a very good example of focus on stuff that you actually want. Don't just buy stuff because it's cheap and available. That's, I guess, the wisdom I can impart. And how much did it cost to transport all of this? This was a separate question. I actually really don't know how much it would cost to ship video games to America. I know when I ship back stuff for like birthdays or Mother's Day, Father's Day, stuff like that. When I ship packages back, when I ship it back EMS, like a medium-sized box, which would be maybe about this big, that I fill quite well, just with normal stuff, that would normally cost, I think, like $40 to ship back a medium-sized box. But that's by the very fastest way. That only takes, I think, 3 or 4 days. As for slower methods, I don't know how much that costs. Next question: when you say the prices in Tokyo, are you referring to the Akihabara area or the whole area, Edogawa, Chiba, etc.? So when I talk about Tokyo prices, I'm really just referring to Akihabara, and I'm saying that because when people visit Tokyo, usually you're only there for a week or two. You don't have the opportunity to go out to Chiba. You can't even really go, even going to Nakano Broadway, which is still in Tokyo proper, but is, I think, probably about an hour away on train. When you're going there to visit the Mandarake, or even going to some of the outer suburbs of Tokyo to hit the hard-offs, you just don't have the time to reach there. So when I talk about Tokyo prices, I talk about Akihabara, and those are by and large catering to tourists and higher-end Japanese collectors. So I guess I should be more specific when I talk about Tokyo prices, but I'm just referring to Akihabara. Next question: do you keep what you find or sell? I've never sold a video game, now that I think about it. Well, when I was a kid, I sold video games. I now regret that to GameStop, but in terms of Japanese games, I've never actually sold a game. I think I tried an experiment with eBay and N64 expansion packs, but that just ended up not being feasible. I did it when I was technically in between jobs, just because I was waiting for another job to start, but I wasn't able to do it with a full-time job. Next, where are these stores located in Japan? And this was a question on a hard-off video, and so I guess if you haven't paid close enough attention, it's not even about paying attention to these videos. It's more of these videos, when I take them, are taken at hard-offs in very suburban / even kind of quasi-rural areas in Japan. I live in Kyushu, which is already, sort of like Japan's deep south, where you've got a lot of space, you've got a lot of room. Even it's all similar to Hokkaido. Hokkaido was incredible just because its hard-offs were so huge. They had these massive speakers that's the only region of Japan where you could have homes big enough to fill with this kind of furniture, and therefore you have the space to fill it with a lot of video games. So hard-offs, They do have them in cities. Tokyo technically has hard offs within the city limits, but you're going to be finding these in the more residential, the less urban, less city center areas of Japan is where you'll find hard offs. Next, do Japanese vacuum seal console packages, or how do they wrap a console with plastic? This is actually an interesting question because it drives me absolutely insane sometimes the way that hard offs will vacuum seal their packages. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll have the console box and then they'll put the console on top of the box. Now what happens is when they vacuum seal those packages, the console will actually start tightening up against the box, and then the box is, usually it'll be the top of the box, will actually start caving in because of that pressure from, not only from the vacuum seal, but from just the weight of the console itself. And it drives me absolutely insane because some of these consoles, they're in that state for years, and so they end up damaging the box, and I really wish they would stop doing that. Next question, do you ever see anything Neo Geo in the junk section in a hard off? And this is actually, I think, a couple videos that I released ago. I've actually, weirdly recently, not that I've seen it a ton, but I have started seeing more Neo Geo stuff in the junk section, and I'm not exactly sure why, because the consoles have been marked as working, but for some reason they're just not put out with the normal consoles, like the normal Nintendo, Sega, and even PC Engine stuff. So I don't know why they're being put in the junk section, but yes, I have been seeing more of that. Next question, do you play all the games in Japanese or can you change the language? Now this really depends on the system, and for old stuff, basically anything PS3 and basically any PS3, Xbox 360, although anything before the PS3 era, before even including the Wii, is going to be one language specifically. So we're talking Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, Wii to a large extent. All of that stuff is going to just be one language. Now with more modern games like PS4, stuff on the Switch, those are the games you're going to be able to change language, and then only sometimes. For example, the most recent couple of Pokemon generations, you've been able to choose your language regardless of what cartridge or console you're playing on. And again, that's just dependent on the game. There's a couple of, if you just Google it, you can find a couple of websites that do list language support for games, so it's just going to depend. Next up, how do I know the condition of a console I buy at hard off? Is it somehow labeled? Yes, they do have it's usually a red label that they'll have on the front of the box. I want to make a whole video about how to read these labels, but they'll tell you what the guarantee is on it. Will it be a 30-day, 90-day, 10-day guarantee? Will the console have scuffs on it? Will it be able to read the games? It explains everything. It's a video I want to make in the future. Next, does Hard Off have a website? Yes, Hard Off actually has sort of two different websites. It has the one website, which is its store information page, which is mostly like store locations and what the stores specialize in. And then there is the Hard Off sort of, I guess you could say web store. And that's where Hard Offs they'll take pictures of their valuable stuff and they'll just put it up on this site, and you can buy it and you can have it shipped to you anywhere in the country. I'm like 99% sure they will not ship abroad, but it might be a good place to check out if you want to price check some games. Again, it just depends on the hard off. Not all of the hard offs do it, and not all of the hard offs will do it for everything they have in stock. And you'll actually notice when you go to a hard off, or even sometimes now book offs and hobby offs, they'll actually have little stickers on the games that will tell you this is on our online web store. And so I think that's just a way of being like, oh, I have to buy it because someone up in Tokyo could buy this and get the deal on it. But yeah, that's another option. If you just Google it, I'm sure you'll find it. Next, what do you do if you find a junk 64 with expansion pack, but you don't want to take the N64 home with you? Can you leave it there or throw it out somewhere? So a game I like to play when I go to a hard off is I check all of the N64s to see if any of them have expansion packs in them. Because an expansion pack, I think normally retails anywhere from $10 to $20 in Japan. You know, like 10,000 or 10,000, 1,000 to 2,000 yen. Whereas a junk N64 is usually anywhere from 300 to 500 yen. So you can save a lot of money that way just by buying the junk console, because the people taking the consoles in don't have the time to check it, or they just don't have the expertise. But when you buy a junk console, you're buying the whole thing. So unfortunately, what you have to do is just pop out the memory expansion, and then I end up just tossing the N64 simply because they're usually really beat up. They're not in sellable condition. Plus, there's just so many junk N64s in Japan that I honestly don't feel that bad about getting rid of them. You know, criticize me if you want. But there's just so much stuff in the junk section that getting rid of a few things I don't think is going to change much. Next, are all junk consoles damaged, or do they not work? Are they all okay but without cables or joysticks, and that's why it has a cheap price? Yes, okay, so junk consoles, if there's something wrong with the junk console, there will usually be a note that they will leave on the console explaining what's wrong with it. Either it doesn't power on, it doesn't read certain kinds of discs, whatever. I'd say 9 times out of 10, a console that you pick up in the junk section and hard off works. The only problem will be is that it's either scuffed up to where it's not seen as sellable, or it hasn't come with the cords. So the people testing the consoles, when a hard off wants to sell something, it needs to do it in volume. It needs to process these things as fast as possible. And they don't have extra cords lying around. They might have cords for their test units, but they don't have cords to pair with that particular console. So they just throw it in the junk section, and that's why junk consoles are usually cheaper, not only because they might be in poor condition, but also because they don't come with the cords. Next up, does the music playing in hard-offs ever change? No, it does not. I have been going to hard-offs for at least 5 or 6 years now, and the music has been the same every time. They might have different like advertisements playing in between the hard-off theme, you know, advertising certain like, oh, hey, trade in 5 games and get like, you know, plus 200 or 300 yen for particular campaigns. But no, the hard off like theme music has not changed. Next question. Are Sega Mega Drive games in the junk as well? Okay, yeah, sorry, it's 2 different questions, so we'll go on the first one. Yes, but they're rare. Again, same as with the consoles. Finding Mega Drive stuff in the junk section is pretty rare, simply because the Mega Drive did not do as well in Japan as it did abroad, so obviously less of a pool. And then the next question, are the hard-offs in Tokyo much smaller compared to other cities? You know what? Thinking back, I haven't been to a Tokyo hard-off in a couple years. I'm actually looking forward to going to Tokyo this coming August to go to the hard-offs there. But no, actually, the Tokyo hard-offs can actually be quite sizable. So visiting there, you're actually going to get a very similar experience to where even like, I actually think some hard-offs I've been to in Tokyo have been bigger than the local hard-off that I have near me. Have you ever seen a CDZ at a hard-off? Yes, I actually bought a junk CDZ that had a bad laser, swapped out the laser with a replacement part, and I got it working, and it also came with 2 controllers, and it came in the box. And I think I've seen a couple of working CDZs at the hard-off, at various hard-offs, and I think they've actually been quite expensive. Next question, and this one is a doozy. I also felt that the hard-off prices have risen significantly. Any views? Yes, well, significantly, I don't know if I would say significantly, and again, it just depends on where you are. For one, hard-off prices are pretty variable. For example, I could go to the hard-off near where I live, and I could pick up a Super Famicom for probably about 50 bucks. But if I go to the hard-off that's at the Costco that's a few hours away from me, they're selling Super Famicoms for about $100 plus, complete in box. Now that is of course much more than it was 5 years ago. So yes, not only between different hard-offs have prices, gone variable, what does that even mean? But yes, over the past 5 years, even at Hard Off, there has been, I don't want to say drastic, but a noticeable increase in price, particularly for consoles, for your Famicom, Super Famicom. N64 hasn't quite happened yet, although it has definitely happened for the sort of variant consoles like the Funtastic, or the different colored, or the Pokemon themed N64s. And for the basic games, not really. I would say your junk section prices are still at the normal 100 yen, 300 yen, 500 yen levels. Even for boxed games, I would say prices have been kind of stable with a little increase. Like, for example, Donkey Kong Country was like a 500 yen game in the past, and now it's maybe like 1,000 yen game complete in the box. For the rare stuff, oh yeah, absolutely. But that's just going hand in hand with general price increases across the country and across all stores. Next question. If I bring my own portable gaming console, is it okay for me to test the open games in the hard off junk section? Now, this is a very interesting question because I would hazard a guess and say yes. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to test the games yourself, because sometimes hard offs will even have a little station that has like a little power strip where you can, and even like a TV, where you can plug in junk consoles and see if they work. And usually, like, the junk's almost like the Wild West. Like, sometimes stores they will tape shut boxes and cases for games just to make sure you don't open them and pull out the manual. Others, they just dump stuff in there and hope someone takes it. So honestly, I think because of the way junk sections are run, you'd probably be okay. And especially if you're a foreigner, like, you'll be. I think they will understand that you have misunderstood what's going on. But I can't see a problem why you couldn't test games in the junk section, portable games specifically. Next, would you recommend buying consoles like the PS1 or Saturn at a hard off or retro specialty store? Now, that's depending on where you are. If you were basically anywhere other than Tokyo, I think you'd be okay buying a console at a retro specialty store. If you're in Tokyo and you're looking for consoles, go to the hard offs, because I just remember last time I was in Tokyo, I found consoles at least half price, or even more of a reduced price at the hard offs in Tokyo than they were in Akihabara. Like, I'm talking, when you go to Akihabara, you'll find an AV Famicom will generally cost like $200 plus, whereas you go to a hard off, even in the Tokyo area, a hard off will generally have an AV Famicom for like $100. Like, and if you're talking like the old Famicom, yeah, it's a completely similar situation. Next, I haven't had nearly as much luck finding good deals in the Tokyo hard offs. I wonder if maybe Chiba would be a bit better since it's a bit more rural. I actually have not been to a hard off in Chiba, but yes, if you're going to the hard offs that are far from the train stations, that you'll need a car or you'll need to take the bus or a taxi to get to, I would say they would probably be cheaper. But then again, I actually, except for like the super rare stuff at Tokyo hard offs, I don't think they're that much more expensive than you would, in the more, central Japan, southern Japan hard offs. Next, this is a little random, but what's the VHS tape situation like in Japan? Yeah, well, if you go to the junk section in hard off, there will be tons of VHS tapes. I've not looked at them myself, but in the junk section, they're super cheap, they're plentiful. I myself like looking at the laser discs, which they also have tons of, and yeah, they shouldn't be more than like $5 for VHS tapes. I can't imagine them being more than $1, but I couldn't tell you the exact price. And then last question for this round of Q&A, why is it so common for games to be in the box? Now, this is actually cuts very deep into Japanese material culture. Because for one, I think on a very surface level, you could say that, Japanese culture is all about, maintaining things, keeping them in good order, keeping things organized. And that might be true to a certain extent when you compare it to American culture, because I'm used to going to GameStops where you just see just crap thrown everywhere. You know, you have games mostly owned by children, so they don't care about the games. They will have no problem just busting up games and then trading them in. Whereas in Japan, gaming has, obviously there have been lots of kids who have been playing video games, but I think in Japan, even from the very beginning, there's a bit more of acceptance of adults playing games, and so adults are going to be much more mindful of the stuff they have. I think the real reason is that Japan has always had a much more sophisticated used market than the United States. I can't talk about Europe. I don't know about what the used video game market is there. But Japan, because things are so much more expensive in Japan, and I'm talking in general, like with electronics, consumer goods, there's been a much more sophisticated secondary market, so people will keep things they have in good shape, expecting that they will sell it down the road. And prices in Japan are such condition specific that if you're selling something that is in really good shape, you will get much more money for it than if it was beat up and deserves to be in the junk section. So that extends to games. And I think people have kept their boxes around, they've kept their manuals around because they know, and they knew even back in the 1990s when this stuff was first coming out, and even back in the 1980s, they knew that if they had all of this stuff, if they kept it in good condition, that they would get a higher price for their trade-in. And that's why I believe that Japanese games you're going to find more Japanese games in the box. Although recently, because you've had all the foreigners coming in and buying up those boxes, yes, you can still find games in the box here in Japan for cheap, but that's becoming less and less so. Actually, even, 5 years ago, there actually wasn't that much of a price differential between a game loose and a game in the box, at least my recollections from one particular store. More recently, the price difference has become much more drastic. And I assume that's because, again, you've got a lot of foreigners coming in, buying up the box games, and leaving. But that's just the nature of the system. We can complain about it all day, but we should also be thankful that there are still plenty of Japanese games left in the box. So that's it for this Q&A. I hope you enjoyed watching. I still got tons more questions that I'd like to answer. And again, if I didn't answer your question, it's because I want to make a longer video about that specific question, or I have it saved for down the road. So thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Still can't believe we made it over 5,000. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching, and mahalo.